Hey, it's Frank from 4D Honeybee, and it is time to electrify. Here's what I got going on here. I'm building a new apiary, a new bee yard here. Just 50 feet or so away from the old one. It's over here. You can just see it there, right? Because bears got into the hive, so I got to electrify a little fence here. And I'm just going to get right into it and show you what I've decided to do. I've taken 5 days of intense YouTube schooling to become an electric fence expert. But this is what I got here. I've gone with a solar powered system. I'll do this with one hand and not break stuff. Gone with a 12 volt deep cycle marine battery and a controller here to make sure that the solar cell doesn't overcharge the battery, right? So you can see it's pumping out lots of volts right now. If we switch it over to amps, that means the battery is not currently being charged, so it's at 0 amps right now. So battery itself is doing great. That's more what the voltage I would expect to see. I don't know why I was up that high before, but going with the Patriot P12 Energizer here. You can hear it working already. So that's going to put out 2 joules of power. They say a minimum of 0.7 for bear. So I'm going to have it hooked up to this switch here so that I can turn on and off the fence without actually grabbing the fence. On and off. It's kind of a temporary setup right now on that post. I imagine I'm going to have to do something more robust because this will probably act as a kite and want to get airborne in a big wind. But I decided to go with this flexible kind of temporary fencing. And the reason why is I've got tons of this steel T-bar. But the truth is, a bear is going to be able to push through T-bar just as easily as he's going to be able to push through this. This is a little much easier to install and cheaper than having to buy the plastic things that you run the line through with the T-bar. And if I want to move it, or if I want to increase the size of the apiary, which I hope I will, because man, 20 by 20 got pretty small pretty quick to me. But anyway, it's good to start, that's for sure. So what we've done so far is we've put the system together. As you can see, it's working. I still have to wire it all and wire the fences. I've driven in the grounding rods. Here's one right here. Get this out of the way. There's one right there. And then I decided to put another one over here. See this one here? Just a little over 10 feet away. And I put it near the fence line so you won't trip over this. We're going to leave that sticking out of the ground so that I can keep an eye on the connection and make sure it's not getting corroded. So the guideline for grounding, if you can't ground the system, the whole premise of this is that the battery puts out a charge to the Energizer. Energizer puts it on steroids, pumps it into the wires of the fence, but then it has to go through the subject, so through the bear, into the ground. And then through the ground rods back to the system, right? That completes the circuit. So you have to have good grounding, right? You also have to have soil that's not going to be too dry. Now, if you look at this, you can see some of this soil is still damp from a rain that happened 2 nights ago. So I'm really happy about that. This is sand on top of clay, so it's not going to be drying out too bad. That's great. That's good for conductivity. So as far as back to the ground rods, what this system asks for is either 2 or 3 feet of ground rod per joule, right? I've seen both in their instructions. So 2 feet for 2 joules is going to be 4 feet worth of ground rod. If it's 3 feet per joule, you're talking 6 feet worth of ground rod. But I've pounded 2 4-footers in, so we've got 8 feet of ground rod. A little spread out, which is exactly what you want. You want to spread out as much spread out as possible, so that you get conductivity far away from where the Energizer is. And now I've got to wire it though. I'm going to run a ground underground ground to ground and back up to the system. So that's all about wiring it all together, turning it on, seeing if it works. So thanks for joining me. Let's see if we can get this done today. Okay, so next step for me was to bury and connect the ground cable. And you can just see the line here that I've done. I used a double shielded underground rated cable to be able to bury it. You can use copper, obviously. That's probably the best, although I'm not sure if copper is usable for underground, but buried it all, connected this. Don't splice your ground cable. If you do, there's a whole bunch of stuff that it changes the parameters of the effectiveness of it. But anyway, just try not to splice it. I didn't. I just folded it, crimped it in, and brought it up to the negative side of the Energizer. So next step is to wire the hot side of the Energizer up to the switch, then back to the fence. And that's it. Oh no, and then I gotta put the actual fence up, as you can see. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do this part first because I'm working on the wiring then. Last step will be the fence, and then connecting it, and then flipping the switch. So here's just a little pro tip for dealing with this. The very hard double shielded cable here, wire. It's a 16 gauge cable, but instead of using the 16 gauge trimmer or wire stripper, I use the next one up because then you know you're not going to touch or damage the cable. So watch how easy this works. Put it in 16 gauge, so I'm going to go to 14. Get about the right length that I want. You can actually hear it cutting right through. Go all the way around, not touching the cable, and then you're stripping it really nice. Now you just bend this into a nice little eye loop and you're set to go. Okay, so there you got it. Those cables are good now. I think we're ready to start wiring up the fence. You can see my ballpark initial fence post installation leaves a lot to be desired for level and symmetry. So I'm going to go around and just finish them off. I didn't get all of them finished right down into the ground, so for that I'm going to use this mallet. Just kind of a soft touch. I love the velvet sledgehammer approach. Just to be able to straighten them out a bit, finish them off, and then I'll start stringing up our electric fence. Next thing I'm going to do now that the poles are in pretty decent shape is I'm going to stake the four corners with this and this. This is a 3/8" braided nylon rope that I used to use to tow banners behind airplanes. I know it's plenty strong. And I think all we want to do is just apply some tension, some outgoing tension like this to the stakes, because wrapping the wire around is going to want to pull them in. And you can see how flimsy these are, right? So we're going to have to counteract that with a bit of a force coming out on the four corners. And you want a bit of tension on this fence, although you're not going to stop a bear from going through with the tension per se. What the tension might do is it might help compress the bear's fur enough that the cable gets close enough to its skin to give it a shock. So you don't want it too loose because they can just push right through it. So that's the plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. I'll show you how I do one of them here, and then I think you'll get the gist. All I do is I start off by tying a loop in the end, just like this, and then I make sure that loop is outside of the stake that I put in. I'm not driving the stake all the way through because I want to have access to here in case I want to put a second rope in, like at the midway point. So driving it in at a 45 roughly. Then I'm bringing it around the third from the top. I'm looping it into the whatever this thing is called, the latch here I'll call it. Looping it in first and bringing it around, looping it in again, so that mostly you're pulling on the bar. Now this bar's already got a bit of a bend to it out, so I don't need to do much. Just bring it back. Again, this is just holding it in a approximate spot to see how it reacts once you put the actual wires up and we see how everything bends and where it wants to go. So all I'm going to do here is just take up the slack here, tie it off like this. Like I said, this one's already got a bit of a bend to it, so I don't need to apply much force here, but this is also really easily adjustable. If you need to give a little slack or take a little slack, easy to do. And you can see, how did that knife fall like that? Did I do that on purpose? Look at that. That's pretty cool. So it's got, I want all these corners to have a bit of a wow out initially, thinking that the cables will counteract and put a bit of a wow in, you see? Okay, so here we're going to make the gate. We're going to start off with the gate here. We're going to put our first line on this bottom run, and we're going to start by, these gate handles are going to latch onto a non-conductive material. So I got this twine. It's a little thin. It won't break, but I think I want something a little thicker just so it'll hold its shape better. But we're going to tie this off, then hook this on, and then start running the cable. Okay, so we're going to start this off with the lower handle. We're just going to tie it off to the spring and bring it around. I'll show you what we do at the other side of the fence, okay? Okay, hopefully this is in frame here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks pretty good, eh? Okay, so we're going to bring it over here. Just have a bit of tension on it. Might as well loop it around just to get it out of our way. So get some tension on it. And bring it through and loop it around. Bring it through again. Holding that tension, okay? Again, you're not only looping it through at the gate and at the corners, but you do want to keep some tension on that line, right? Okay, so now we're back to the gate. So we're going to wrap it around a couple of times again, and then move up to the second peg and go back the other way. All right, check it out. Just keeping a bit of tension on it all the way through. Takes a little bit for you to get the handle of how to manage the spool and such. Okay, I need to bring this back around and lock it in. Okay, so now we get up to the next one, and now we walk back around that way. Okay, so we're bringing the strand now back to the gate on the second handle here. What we're going to do is just loop it through like so, and we'll worry about tightening it up in a sec here, but looping it through and then bringing it around the entire handle like so. I'll try and pick a spot where we're going to tighten it up. Just want to be able to stretch out the elastic, or the spring here a little bit. Just a little tighter than that. That's what's going to give you the tension. let's see. That's pretty good right there. Okay. Then we take the strand up to the next one up. Do the same thing, loop it around. And then start your next pull. All right. Start heading back the other way. Strand number 3, we're just bringing back to the gate, wrapping it around, looping it under, wrapping it around again. Make sure we get some tension on that. It's pretty good. Just kind of making it so that it locks itself in some position here. It can't loosen up. And then we're heading up to the top strand, and that's our last one. Okay, so now we're back here and we're at the final handle here. So you just gonna measure it out. You're just gonna cut the wire and tie it off tight, and then we'll check it all out and see. I can see there's a bit of slack in the bottom, the very first one, and we can adjust that pretty easily. You can see how pulling it tight is just straightening out that post quite nicely. We'll trim this off in a bit. See how tension wise the bottom one is a little loose? We're just going to untie this and tighten it right up. So let's take a quick look at what we got here. Got a big space here. That's not good. And that's because there's just not enough space between these two guys. See that? So we'll see how we can fix that. But the rest of it looks pretty good. You see how there's a decent amount of tension on these cables. And you see how the corners ended up pretty straight. I pulled it back a little bit with this support guide wire there, and then pulled tight to straighten it out with the actual cables. I like the look of it though. It's looking pretty decent. We'll see if we can fix that one little spot there and then hook it all up and give her some juice. Okay, so I was able to fix that spacing easily enough, but here's the spacing that I decided to do. You see how I went on the bottom cleat, let's call it, and then skipped one, then the next one, skipped one, then the next one, and then right to the top. You think this space is too big? You think this space here is going to be tempting for Yogi to stick his nose through there and go through? I think maybe it should be down one. Because they say the fence is supposed to be 2/3 the height of the critter, right? And I mean, certainly on all fours, they're about yay tall. So it's probably about right, but just wondering if this space is too tempting. Tell you what, if you got any experience with it, let me know. Because I'm going to start with this, but it would be easy enough just to lower that strand down to the next cleat down. And yeah, I'd like to know your opinion on that. Now it's time to connect the hot to the energizer, I think, whatever's left to do there, and then flip the switch, man. Okay, now this part I'm a little concerned about because there wasn't much information on the interweb on how to actually connect the cable to the fence. And I did see one video that seemed like a pretty decent way to do it. And I'm going to do my own little twist on it. I'm going to try to open up the strands a little bit so that I can poke the wire through. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. Come on, baby. Okay, so now I know the cable is in amongst the cables, and what this gentleman did, maybe I'll find a link for him because he did a nice little video on electric fence for bees, was this. Poke this through, get some foil coverage on the cable, like so. And then wrap this puppy around, poking it through each time. And then he just finished off by wrapping it all up in more tinfoil. So, I don't know, I took electricity in high school. Never came across the tinfoil method, but I really didn't find anything that I thought was better. And I mean, there's a lot of metal surface area here making contact, so hopefully that will do it. I am gonna just tape this as well, just because I don't like the look of it. And that's it. Okay, so it is my belief that this fence is ready to be energized. So let's get to it. Okay, so in here, all we should need to do is connect the Energizer red to the battery positive. Hearing it click, got good voltage, still got a full battery. Alright, so now, the only thing that's keeping this system from being energized is that switch right there. So I'm going to get on the other side, I'm going to flip the switch, and hopefully you don't see a big puff of blue smoke or me screaming. Okay, let's hook this bad boy up. Now let's flip the switch. Wow, okay, well, it's working. That's a lot tighter than I wanted it to be. Okay, there's contact. So what happens now? So I on that switch there, I got a little bit of a zing. So there's power. Now the question is how much and where. There's power coming to that switch. So there's got to be power going to that fence. Now let's see if we can figure out how to measure it. I don't want to stick my tongue on it, although I do have to go to the bathroom. Maybe no, let's not do that. Okay, so as opposed to the tongue or pea method, I ended up buying this fence voltmeter so we can see what's going on. So let's see if we can get this right down to the ground here. Just stick it in the ground, stick this part in the ground, touch this to the cables, and let's see what kind of gigawatts we got happening here. Okay, that's in the ground. 10,000 volts. Woo! How about this one? 10 kilowatts, man. All right, let's see if we can see it, maybe zoom in on it without me zapping myself. Oops. Can you see that? $10 kilowatts, man, 10,000. All right, so let's go to the farthest part away from the Energizer. Let's go to that side of the fence and measure it there. Okay, so this is the farthest possible point from the Energizer. We'll stick it in the ground. Whoa, that's tough. Lots of clay here, which I think is really good. Okay, let's see if we can get this in and then focus it in. Contact, 10,000. That is a thing of beauty. So the fence is working, and now I've got to just spend a little bit of time preparing to get the hive in here. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning, very early in the morning. So I need to set up that, get it ready, and things. Overview on the fence here. Remember, you got to keep the vegetation off the bottom, eh? You can see how I've cleared out most of the stuff, but all this grass, anything that comes in contact with this thing is going to take away some of your juice, right? And make the fence weaker. So you got to make sure that you back that away. I probably still need to work on that throughout the season, but it's pretty good already, just because this area isn't prone to that much vegetation. Other things that I've learned so far, well, I'm still not sure. This is a pretty good angle here. I'm still not sure if that top strand is too high. I'm really looking for your input on that. I kind of think it should come down one peg. And let me know what you think on that. Budget-wise, this cost me a small fortune. It's so funny, at the beginning of the year, I was hesitating on buying a second nuke of bees because I didn't want to spend 300 bucks. I must have spent close to between 700 and 1,000 on this, which doesn't mean that you have to. I was just in a pinch, and I was not going to lose this second hive, right? It means a lot to me to make every effort possible to not let that bear get back and get this hive, so I'm going to have a sleepless night tonight. But if you find stuff used, especially in rural areas, like I just look on Kijiji now, and an Energizer's up for 50 bucks. I spent 300 or 200 bucks on that thing, brand new. So I'll do a budget out maybe if I feel like it, and and present that to you. But you can price stuff out online. Basic electrical is helpful. Really spend a lot of time on those ground rods. If it's not grounded properly, it's never going to work. So and we'll see what the longevity is like. We'll see if that charger system works okay, and we'll see. I'll put some trail cameras up too. I got to set that up and make sure Yogi gets a zap next time he comes. So that might be it. I might add on something more to this video if I find it. Actually, one thing I do have to do is I'm not happy with that pole. That whole setup is not robust enough. A wind is going to knock that thing down. And even just now, I had to be really careful how I flipped that switch. So I'm going to have to make that more robust somehow and figure it out. But the rest I'm pretty happy with. For first time doing it, I'm even happy with my lines here. Look, I can live with that. So anyway, thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for joining me at 4D Honeybee.